One of the strange things about Henry is that we don't really know what he dies of. It's very hard to medically diagnose people from 4th centuries.
A 44-year-old king lies unconscious for 2 hours, crushed under his own armored horse. He wakes up, but the man who rises is not the same one who fell. This is the story of King Henry VIII's catastrophic decline.
He had increasingly a problem with his legs, and he also suffered really badly from constipation.
We're not just talking about his infamous weight gain or his festering leg sores. We are talking about a complete personality collapse, from a charismatic hero to a paranoid monster. New research into his bloodline reveals the shocking truth. It wasn't just an accident. It was a genetic curse that was already ending the lives of his children. From hero to tyrant, the medical mystery. Fast forward to 1547, the year of his demise. The man who died at 55 was unrecognizable. He weighed nearly 400 pounds, with a reported waistline of 54 inches. He was so large he had to be winched and carried around his own palaces. His body was a landscape of agony, most notably his legs, which were covered in festering, oozing ulcers that never healed. The stench of his rotting flesh was said to precede him, warning courtiers that the king was approaching. But his physical decay was nothing compared to the decay of his mind. The charismatic, jovial prince was gone. In his place was a paranoid, irritable, and explosive tyrant. This was a man who ruled with such paranoid brutality that it shocked even the brutal era he lived in. He had sent 2 of his 6 wives to the scaffold, along with thousands of others, including his closest friends and advisors like Thomas More and Thomas Cromwell. So what on earth happened? How does a nation's hero transform so completely into its greatest monster? For centuries, the easy answers were power and gluttony. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? Others whispered about syphilis, a rampant disease of the era, or perhaps type 2 diabetes from his legendary feasting. But none of these theories fully explained the sheer pattern of the tragedy. They couldn't explain why multiple wives, in a row, suffered such a specific and heartbreaking series of miscarriages and stillbirths. And they couldn't explain the timing, why his mental state seemed to fall off a cliff right after he turned 40. The truth, it turns out, lay hidden somewhere microscopic. It was coded into his very DNA, a genetic time bomb set to go off mid-life. And it took modern science, nearly 500 years later, to finally find it. Many historians point to a single day, January 24th, 1536. At Greenwich Palace, the king, then 44 years old and still relatively fit, was in full armor for a jousting tournament. Then, disaster. His horse stumbled and the king crashed to the ground. The horse, also in armor, fell on top of him, crushing him with what experts estimate was over 200 pounds of metal. Henry was unconscious for 2 full hours. When he finally woke up, the court celebrated. The king had survived. But the man who woke up was not the same man who fell. This accident wasn't the cause of his downfall. It was the trigger. It was the moment that flipped the switch on a dormant horror that had been lurking in his blood all along. Within months, his personality began to warp. The explosive rages started. The paranoia took root. And, most tellingly, his legendary leg ulcers began to develop, festering wounds from the accident that simply would not heal. The real question wasn't just what happened to Henry. The question was, what was he carrying in his blood that made it all possible? The jousting accident was bad, but it only opened the door to a much darker family curse. The tragic pregnancies of 2 queens. Henry VIII's primary obsession, the one that drove his entire reign, was his desperate need for a male heir. He broke with the Catholic Church, tore his country apart, and sent wives to their end, all in pursuit of a son. But what if the problem wasn't his wives? What if it was Henry himself? In 2011, bioarchaeologist Katrina Whitley and historian Kira Kramer published research that shocked the academic world. They proposed that King Henry VIII likely carried a rare blood-type antigen called Kell-positive. Most people have never heard of it. That's because about 91% of the population is Kell-negative. But for that rare 9% who are positive, like Henry, It can be a genetic nightmare for reproduction, especially in an age before modern medicine. Here is the devastating scenario. Henry, being Kell-positive, marries a Kell-negative woman, like researchers believe both Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn. He impregnates her. There's a 50-50 chance the baby will inherit his Kell-positive blood. The first pregnancy usually goes just fine. The baby comes to term healthy. But during that first birth, a small amount of the baby's Kell-positive blood crosses into the mother's bloodstream. Her immune system, seeing this foreign Kell antigen, does what it's designed to do. It creates powerful antibodies to destroy it. She is now sensitized. Then comes the second pregnancy with a Kell-positive baby. Those antibodies, now lying in wait, cross the placenta and launch an all-out attack on the developing fetus. They destroy the baby's red blood cells. The fetus becomes anemic. Fluid builds up in its tissues. Its heart and spleen swell, trying to compensate. Most of the time, heart failure follows. The pregnancy ends in a late-term miscarriage or stillbirth, usually around 24 to 28 weeks. Now, look at Henry's wives. Catherine of Aragon's reproductive history is a textbook medical tragedy. She endured at least 6 pregnancies, maybe as many as 8. Her first, in 1510, was a stillborn daughter. Her second, in 1511, produced a son, Prince Henry, who lived for only 52 days before his unexplained demise. Then came the pattern, a miscarriage, another son who passed within hours, and more miscarriages. Her 5th pregnancy, in 1516, finally produced a living, healthy child, Princess Mary. How? Mary likely inherited her mother's Kell-negative blood, so the antibodies didn't attack. After Mary, every subsequent pregnancy failed. The pattern with Anne Boleyn was even more clinically precise. Her first pregnancy produced Elizabeth in 1533. Born healthy, no complications. This is exactly what the Kell theory predicts. But her second pregnancy ended in a miscarriage. Her third, the one that happened just days after Henry's 1536 jousting accident, ended with a miscarried male fetus. This pattern, repeating across different healthy women, points the finger directly at the father. Henry wasn't cursed by God. He was, in all likelihood, a rare Kell-positive man, and his own blood was responsible for the cascade of tragic pregnancies. He interpreted these losses as divine punishment, first for marrying his brother's widow, then for other perceived sins. This religious terror fueled his paranoia and his desperation. But the truth was biological. His own DNA was ending the lives of his heirs, and he had no way of knowing it. His blood explained the lost heirs, but it couldn't explain his madness. That required a second, even rarer, genetic flaw. When DNA attacks the brain, the Kell-positive blood type explains the dead babies. But what explains the monster? What explains the jovial, charismatic prince transforming into a paranoid tyrant who would execute his own wife on flimsy, trumped-up charges? The same researchers propose something even more sinister, McLeod syndrome. This is an exceptionally rare genetic disorder carried on the X chromosome, which means it almost exclusively affects men. And here's the kicker. Its symptoms typically begin to manifest around age 40. The timing is chilling. Henry was 44 when his personality began its dramatic nosedive, right after the jousting accident. McLeod syndrome attacks the body on multiple fronts. It causes progressive muscle weakness and heart problems. But its psychological symptoms are the most devastating. We're talking paranoia, severe anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, and personality changes so severe that patients become completely different people. After 1536, courtiers wrote about the transformation. The king who loved music and dancing was gone. In his place was someone darker, more suspicious, and terrifyingly erratic. His decision-making became brutal. Look at Anne Boleyn. Henry had moved heaven and earth to marry her, breaking with Rome and upending his kingdom. He was obsessed with her. Then, suddenly, his love twisted into murderous hatred. He didn't just divorce her, he accused her of adultery with 5 men, including her own brother, and witchcraft. It's almost certain none of it was true. But Henry's mind, potentially under attack by a neurological disorder, was unraveling. This pattern continued with terrifying consistency. Catherine Howard, his fifth wife, was sent to the scaffold for adultery. Thomas More, his longtime friend and mentor, was ended for political defiance. Thomas Cromwell, the man who had faithfully engineered the break with Rome, was also sent to the scaffold on flimsy charges. Henry's paranoia was spiraling, and it's very possible a genetic disorder was pouring gasoline on the fire. And this syndrome also explains the other great mystery, the leg ulcers. The jousting accident in 1536 caused the initial injury, but why didn't it heal? For 11 years. McLeod syndrome is known to cause muscle weakness and compromise circulation, especially in the legs. Henry's legs were likely getting such poor blood flow that even a normal wound couldn't repair itself. It was a perfect storm. A massive blunt force trauma combined with a genetic disorder that made healing impossible. This genetic 1-2 punch sent Henry into a spiral of pain and immobility, creating the 400-pound king of nightmares. The weight of a dying king. Henry's genetic disorders were the engine, but his lifestyle was the fuel. Once the jousting accident ended his active life, the decline became catastrophic. The man who once hunted for 8 hours a day was now almost completely sedentary. The chronic, excruciating pain from his leg ulcers made any exercise agonizing. His mobility, already being compromised by McLeod syndrome, was vanishing. But the thing that didn't change was his diet. A Renaissance banquet was a spectacle of excess. We're not talking about a 3-course meal. We're talking about dozens of dishes. Swan, peacock, venison, boar, beef, mutton, countless pies, pastries, and custards, all washed down with gallons of strong ale and wine. When Henry was young and active, his body could, for the most part, handle this caloric onslaught. He burned it off on the hunt or in the tilt yard. But now, unable to move, those same meals became an engine of self-destruction. The weight gain created a vicious cycle. More weight put more pressure on his damaged legs. More pressure meant worse circulation. Worse circulation meant the ulcers couldn't heal. The constant mind-numbing pain and immobility led to depression, and food and drink likely became his only comfort. So he ate more, and the cycle continued. His doctors, using 16th century medicine, were helpless. They didn't understand metabolism, calories, or cardiovascular health. In a terrible twist of irony, they probably made things worse. Tudor fashion demanded tight garters worn just below the knee to hold up his hose. These would have acted like tourniquets, further constricting blood flow to his lower legs and turning manageable wounds into the festering, rotting disasters of legend. Contemporary accounts describe Henry in his final years with horror. The Venetian ambassador reported that the king had to be carried everywhere in a chair and could barely stand. His face was bloated and ruddy. His breathing was a labored wheeze. Many reports say he had to sleep sitting up, because lying down made him feel like he was suffocating, a classic symptom of congestive heart failure. Modern medical experts, looking at the records, believe Henry developed a cascade of obesity-related conditions. Type 2 diabetes was almost a certainty. His extreme thirst and slow-healing wounds are textbook symptoms. Hypertension would have followed. His kidneys were likely failing. He also developed gout, a form of arthritis so painful that even the touch of a bedsheet on his feet would have been agonizing. His heart, a muscle designed for a 200-pound athlete, was now trying to pump blood through a 400-pound body. It was failing. All of this was happening while his brain was also under attack. The humiliation for a man who defined himself by his physical power must have been unbearable. This genetic curse didn't start with Henry. To find its source, we have to look back at a woman accused of witchcraft. So where did this genetic double curse come from? Researchers traced it back through Henry's maternal line to his great-grandmother, Jacquetta of Luxembourg. What do you think? Does this genetic evidence change how we should view him? Was he a monster, a victim, or both? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories. Thanks for watching.